Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshops, where we get together in the middle of the week and we talk technology. This is the third Wednesday of the month, and that's traditionally our Linux Day. As you can see by the sign, don't fear the penguins. And we are in the middle of a three-part workshop, mainly focusing on the Windows user who might be interested in making a switch or checking out Linux. Last month, we worked on the beginnings of it and creating a bootable thumb drive so that you could test it out. Today, our focus is going to be on installing. Cal's going to do that on a different computer. We're not going to be talking about dual booting. We don't want to mess with that because Windows sometimes doesn't play nice. So we're talking about grabbing an older computer and throwing Linux on it so you can have a regular Windows computer and the Linux that you're going to learn to love. And then we'll finish up with other things next month. I do need to do a follow-up from last month with not a lot of information about it. I was just made aware that some people were having difficulty trying to use Etcher on Windows 11. And I've only had time to do a real quick scratch the surface. And it seems to be that Windows 11 is just a different, unique type of operating system, different than 10. That there's more of in terms of security issues or something. I read where something had to do with folders, permissions, and you'd have to go in and make some changes or put the Etcher program and your ISO in a folder that is not being protected by Windows 11. Somebody else said that if you just turn off Windows security program, that evidently blocks it because it's trying to think it's virus or whatever. So maybe we'll check into that, but we're not going to be focusing much on that because our idea was we're talking mainly to those Windows people that have Windows 7 still and Windows 10 and have a computer that is still perfectly fine, but can't go to 11. And what you can do if you don't want to have to put out money for a brand new computer, you can get a brand new operating system for free that'll run on just about any piece of hardware. And so, yep, there might be some problems with 11, and it's not necessarily an Etcher problem, but it seems to be something that Microsoft has done with their super security stuff. And I don't remember whether I even tried to do it with 11. And one person said that when they tried to do it, it even locked up their computer, that they had to go into unlocking, I think the bit something or other, bit encryption, which was odd because Windows 11 Home doesn't use that. You have to have the Pro version. But yet it locked it up. They had to go on another computer, find this big 25 code and to be able to get back into their computer. So there might be some issues. We can talk about that if anybody has ran into those during our later Q&A time. But yeah, they're a problem, but we aren't focusing really on 11 because we probably figure those people on 11 are going to be staying 11. So today we're talking about installing on an older computer, but we have a way that you can save or take that old computer and put some new life into it. So I'm going to turn things over to Orv, and he's going to talk about taking an old computer and even sprucing it up some before you install. So Orv?
Thanks, guys. How's my audio, John?
I hear you.
Good deal. All right. Let me share my screen. It's always an adventure. How's that, John? Look okay?
Looks for me, and I noticed that your eyes look pretty good after your surgery.
Oh yeah, thanks. I'm pretty happy with them. So folks, why would you want to use a solid state drive in this newly created Linux computer? Or actually you put it in before you put Linux on it. And we'll talk about that. Doing some comparison, the pros, they're way faster than hard drives. I believe the earliest solid state drives were about 3 times faster than a hard drive, and they've only improved since then. No moving parts, it's solid state, it's all integrated circuits inside, which means, well, they do wear out, and we'll talk about that, but not in the way you'd think a hard drive would fail. Substantially less power required. I think I read 10 watts, at least a third, at least 1/3, no more than 1/3 of a hard drive. No moving parts, there's no fan required, so they are silent. And they come in a few different interface options, and we'll talk about that. And honestly, my wife's computer is, well, the motherboard's got to be pushing a dozen years old, and it runs fine with Linux and a solid state drive. The cons, they're somewhat more expensive, but it's way worth it. And we say somewhat, I don't know, $100 maybe. Solid state drives are made of flash memory. When flash memory first came on the scene in the electronics industry, they were very write limited, maybe like 1,000 writes. And like anything else electronic, they've improved over time, improved substantially in this case. I saw a test done maybe 2 years ago where they took some computers and put different brands, same size, different brands of solid state drives in them, and wrote a program to just absolutely beat them to death with writes. And they did a lot of technical monitoring of different metrics. And solid state drives have spare blocks in them that they can transparently substitute for failed blocks. In other words, they have spare space when needed. And they noted that most of the drives didn't start replacing used blocks until they'd written several, was it terabytes or petabytes? But it's ridiculous. It'll last longer nowadays than the other hardware. You'll want to upgrade the computer before the solid state drive wears out. And by the way, I recently bought a new Dell, first new computer I've ever bought in my life. All the others have been used or put together from parts. And it came with a solid state drive in it. I took the solid state drive out of my old computer running Linux, put it in the new computer, and booted up Linux. There was only 2 or 3 little tweaks to do. So if you're running Linux, hardware upgrades are way easier. There's a hard drive. Most people have seen this. Data is written in circular tracks, and the tracks are divided into sectors. And the head has to move to the track and have to wait till the sector or sectors is underneath it before it can start reading or writing. And you can see if you have a highly fragmented drive, you have to wait to get all of it as it moves around the disk to get it. I should have written a slide on this, but talk a little bit about history. Probably in the late 70s, hard drives went to the 5 1/4 inch format, but they were full height. And in those days, electronics weren't compressed or integrated enough to put the controller electronics on the drive. So they had a separate, in the case of the PC, full-length board that was the hard drive controller. And it went to the drive when in those cases, was known as an MFM drive, modified FM. That was the modulation technique they used to write data. So the board itself was responsible for transmitting to the drive all of the waveforms that were used to modulate the magnets that in turn magnetized the drive. They worked. They were pretty ugly. They weren't, were they 5,400? They were 3,600 RPM in those days. Then they went to the really hot 5,400 RPM. And then they went to 7,200 RPM. A few years later, they got the electronics integrated enough to where they could mount the drive electronics on the drive itself, and it was known as IDE, Integrated Drive Electronics. But it used this parallel ribbon cable going to the motherboard. It was a big improvement, but as time went on, that ribbon cable started to look larger and larger, and they went to SATA. Or actually, let me rewind. When IDE became very, very popular, they formalized the protocols, and this was the time of the PC-AT. So it was known as the AT attachment, or ATA drive. The ribbon cable had to go, so they serialized it, and they made serial ATA, or SATA. One other thing they did that was transparent to everybody, back in those days, they had a lot of SCSI drives. They were a different format, very popular in large computers because you could daisy chain drives together. They were all individually addressable. When they went from ATA to SATA, they adapted the SCSI command set. The commands that you send to the drive electronics to say, write this block, you know, read this file. And that simplified computer programming, because regardless of whether it was a SCSI drive or a SATA drive, the driver was pretty much the same. So anyway, this is the guts of an SSD. As you can see, it's all solid state, and you can see the SATA interface at the top of the middle. Same format as a 2¼ inch hard drive, but now all solid state. On the left is 2¼ inch SATA drive, as I said, fast, and this is a Samsung. Samsung's highly recommended, 250 gig, I don't know, $100 maybe. And when they started putting these in laptops, they used the SATA interface. It just slid in there. But as they packed more and more on the motherboard, they developed this new interface called M2. It's still SATA, but it's a much smaller interface, and it just bolts down on the, slides in the connector, lies parallel or horizontal to the motherboard, and there's a screw that goes up here at the top. At this point in time, the drive electronics and computers had improved enough to where the really fast SATA interface was starting to become a bottleneck. So they developed the M.2 NVMe, which stands for Non-Volatile Memory Host Controller Interface Specification Express. So NVMe's a lot better. It uses the PCIe bus, and it can combine several of them for really, really fast I/O to the disk. Crazy fast. Leaves SATA in the dust. And you can skim this, but it basically lists all the ways that SSDs are so much faster. Lower power, failure rates, really fast I/O, because on hard drive, when you're reading in a file that's scattered all across the hard drive, as I mentioned, the head has to move all the way around. With solid state drives, it doesn't, there's no fragmentation that the controller knows about. The solid state drive just fetches all of the data from that file. Now, obviously, doing backups is faster. I/O requests are faster. And that ends my presentation, quick and dirty. Back to you, John. Oh, you're muted, John.
I did the button, but I have to put the boom down. All right, that was really good. I even learned a little bit on the where the Saturn Eta came. I've known about that all along. All right, so basically we're saying if you take last week's, last month's activities and find yourself an older computer that you can make it even better by just putting a little investment in and switch out that hard disk drive for a SATA. So now we're going to switch to, for those who weren't here last month, I'm sorry, because you missed out me sharing how you create a live thumb drive to test Linux. And then Cal last week showed you how to boot up to that thumb drive to test out, see how you like Linux. Today, we're going to go through the actual installation on that older computer that you have found that's going to bring new life to it. I don't know whether or not Cal is going to say it, but he'll say it twice. We are not going to be talking about dual booting. That's another whole mess of trouble. So I'm going to turn things over to Cal, and we'll show you the process of installing Linux and get it up and running. Over to you, Cal.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. And so I'm going to talk about installing Linux on an extra Windows 10 computer. And there are many ways to experience Linux. Is everything slides coming up, John?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had to get everything turned on.
And there are many ways you can do it, but that's not what I'm going to do today. And I'm going to talk about older PCs that you can't upgrade to Windows 11, or you don't want to update to Windows 11. Or maybe you've updated you've got a new Windows 11 machine, and what do you do with the Windows 10 that you have? So I'm going to do this install on this extra Windows, and I'm going to do it 100%. It's going to take over the complete computer, no dual boot. And it's going to be as easy of installation as I can imagine. I'm going to use Linux Mint 21 with the Cinnamon desktop, and I'm going to let Linux Mint do everything itself. I'm going to let it automatically make all the decisions. Of course, you need the bootable USB with the Linux Mint ISO. And you need the extra PC that you're willing to sacrifice. Now, everything on that PC, hopefully you have saved, extracted, put somewhere separate, because we're going to wipe out the entire drive. And as John mentioned last month, we gave the details for getting the USB, for getting the ISO, putting it on a USB, booting into the extra PC and testing out the PC to see that everything worked. So now we're going to do it for real. And I'm going to show you the screenshots of an actual install that I did on an old Windows PC. So here is Linux Mint 21. I booted it up on a live USB. This is what you would see today. For those who don't know, at the bottom is the control panel. The launcher or the start button is on the left corner. And over on the right corner is the system tray. And one thing I like to do is hook up to the internet before I start an installation. In this case, you see that I don't have an internet connection. So if I click on that icon, it will give me the options, and I can either stick in a wired Ethernet plug, or I can slide the little wireless indicator, and that will then open up, give me a check, and I can see all of the Wi-Fi transmitters close enough in my area. So what I'll do is pick the one I want, and of course it's going to be secured, and so I'll have to put in the Wi-Fi code, and then once I do it and connect, it will give me this symbol, and that will tell me I'm connected. So I like to do this before I start the operation, although you can do it during the install. So here we are. You can see I've got the install, the Wi-Fi connection showing. And then what I want to do is there's an icon that says Install Linux Mint. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll double click on that, and it will start what is called a Ubiquity installer. There are several general installers in Linux. Ubuntu types use one called Ubiquity. And these installers do all the work for you. So the first thing you're going to see, it's going to come up with a dialog box. And in this dialog box is to select the language you want, because Linux supports many, many languages. And at the bottom of each dialog box, you're going to get a continue. So what we're going to see is a series of dialog boxes. So here's the second dialog box, and it says, go ahead, select your keyboard, and then continue. In the next few slides, I'll not put this continue, this bottom part, so I'll just put the main part of the screen. The next screen says, do you want to install multimedia codecs? Yeah, why not? I want to see video. And then here's the most important screen in the whole series. It says, what type do you want? At the top, you can see that if I had Windows 10 or even 11, but Windows 10, it would, or another Linux system, it would allow me to put this side by side. I'd have to decide how to split the drive and so forth. But I don't want to do that. I want to do a complete fresh install. So I'm going to erase the disk. And it's going to do everything for me. For those who are experts who've done this many times before, you go to this something else, and you have put all your partitions in your drive, and you want this here and that, and your EFI boots, and all the necessary things that most people don't want to know about. So we're going to let Linux Mint do everything for us. So the next screen says, by the way, I'm going to erase everything on this disk. I'm going to use the whole disk, the whole 500 gigabytes. All right, that's your first warning. Then the next thing is, here's what I'm really going to do. I'm going to destroy everything on the disk. That's your second warning. And then it's going to tell you what it's going to change. And here it's going to put an ESP, which is an EFI boot section. It's going to put the main section as an ext4, which is one of the formats you can choose. Some use Btrfs. You don't need to know any of this. It's going to do it, but it's telling you it's going to do it. And this is your last chance. When you click continue now, everything gets wiped out. So you click continue, poof, and it's all gone. So now that we've removed everything, we have to put stuff back. So now we're gonna, having formatted the drive essentially, we're gonna go and install Linux on fresh system. Again, you get a series of dialog boxes. The first one asks you your time. And the second one, you put your personal information. You can put any name you want. Generally, you put your first and your last name, and then it will automatically select the first name. It generally puts a lot of verbiage for your computer name. You can make it as short as you want. And then you need to choose a password. Now this is important because in Linux, you will enter this password several times a session. So make it a good password, but something that you can easily enter. All right. And I normally I'll put about 10 or 12 letters, and it says it's weak because I didn't use special characters or whatever they think I should do, but I can type it, and it's pretty strong. Generally, I require my password to log in, and I generally don't encrypt. I have it here, and then I continue. At this time, it will now install. That's all we had to do. Now it's going to do all the work. And generally, depending on the speed of your computer, it will take, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes to 20 minutes. I've had all types. If you've got a good solid state drive, it might take 3 minutes. But during this time, you'll get another series of dialog boxes. And here's a segment. You can see the progress bar at the bottom is slowly getting bigger. And they just give you these dialog boxes so that something for you to look at. Don't do anything during this period. Don't try to interrupt anything. And it tells you lots of stuff. Things that it's just propaganda or whatever, advertisement. So at the end though, when it's finished, it will tell you, and it will give you this message, installation complete. Now you have to reboot the computer, and this will take just a couple minutes. And the first thing you will see here is the startup screen, but it will put another dialog box in front of you. Mint and several other Linux distributions have started this welcome screen. Now, every time you start the computer, it'll come up. If you don't want to see it the second or third time, there's this little box you uncheck here, and it won't come up again. And it's a series of things you could look at. The only one I really look at is, and I go down, it forces you to go to the first steps. And this first steps helps new users go through and set things up on their machine. It also, for long-time Linux users, Mint uses slightly different terms for the same software that we normally use to set things up. So it kind of leads you through the basic terminology. The first thing here is pretty easy. People like to configure their machine, and Mint has got it. So look, most people just want the color, what they call the accent color, and whether it's a light or dark mode. And so this is right at first. Here's an example. Here's the original, and I picked the purple color so that you'll see that these little colors here, we call accent colors, the colors of your folder, will come out purple. Pick the color you want. And here is the dark screen. And this is a mode that will show up in various other applications. So dark screens are good if you're late at night and the bright light will bother your eyes, or if you do it in the daytime, you want light screen. So you can pick it. People have their choices one way or the other. They also give you two choices here for panel setting types. I always pick the modern layout. It looks like Windows 10. And then I'll go down the list. There's a few more things that it tries to tell you. The first thing is called system snapshots, which for Windows people would be a restore point. And what this does is it backs up only the operating system, not your personal file. So when you get an update on the operating system of any type or add software, if something goes wrong, this is a way to go back to the previous state and then not do that update. The Mint philosophy now, they've gone through several philosophy changes, but with this software, which is their software now, they maintain this software, is always update everything. If something breaks, you use this to recover. They got a lot of bad press about not encouraging people to update, and this is their solution. So you set up, you take a system snapshot, you set a schedule of how often you want to back it up. Generally, I recommend no more than 1 or 2, and probably once a week I do it, because it takes up a lot of space. Then there's the update manager, and it has a very good update manager, very simple. It will notify you when it needs an update, and you update it. One thing about Mint or any Linux is you update little pieces, and so you update often, but very short updates. None of these monthly big updates. System settings is how you customize it the way you like, very user-friendly. You might call these preferences on other systems. Then for Software Manager, this is a program that gets you free software, including the flat pack types, which enable you to keep up so that you can keep an older system. And if you need a particular software to be updated to the modern version, you can just do that for one unique piece of software. And there's a firewall, you can just turn this on. This is a software firewall. So that's kind of, you go down the list here and do these. And so here I'm back. I've done what I needed to do, and I'm back to the main screen. And you notice down on this system tray, you'll see 2 things. First, you'll see a system reports. This is an alerting message, but only shows when you need it. And I'll show you what happens when you first start up. And then this is your update manager. It's always available. And when you need an update, the current way they tell you that you need an update is there's a little orange circle here. So you click on that icon, it takes you to the update manager, and you can update what you need to update. So let's look at the system reports. If you do the system reports, generally it starts out, I've always seen this, it says install language packs. I generally do. If you have not done the time shift backups, it'll nag you. Also, as you see, the software updates, if you have not installed them in a long time, they will nag you here to tell you really ought to do this. And also, if you have a serious problem with your machine, it will tell you. One thing I like in system reports, it has system information. This is a quick way to see what your system is, if you want a new part or whatever. I also like it because if you look at a lot of old machines, it will tell you your battery capacity. So not only that it's 100%, but that it's like here it's 79% of the cells are active. The update manager, this is a screen of the update manager, and Mint has 3 types of updates. If you see the shield, that means it's a bug fix. If you, security fix. If you see the up arrow, that means it's a bug fix. And if you get a new system-wide software like the kernel, it'll give you this electrical signal. So one thing about their updates, you can click this off if you don't want a particular update. Mint recommends you update everything all the time. It's defaulted to be checked. You have to uncheck it. Once you decide that looks okay, you hit Install Updates. And you'll see this many times because you'll be updating many times. And it will come up with a box, a dialog box, for you to authenticate. And what you do here is, when you set up your machine, your password to log in gives you root privileges when you need. This is the password that you give. You, as you normally work, you're a normal user. You're not as an admin. But when you want to do something that affects the system, it requires you to give the password, and that will give you momentary root privileges. However, it's just for that action or series of actions. And then when you go back to another program, you no longer have root privileges, which protects you from doing things that will hurt your machine. The command line interface has also ways to update your machine, in which case you have to use the super user mode to run any command if you need root privileges. So here I've updated everything. It gives me a nice check. In Linux, once you update it, you don't have to log out. Whatever software was updated is ready to use in updated fashion. The exception to that is if it's a kernel or firmware change. This requires you to reboot. The reason is the kernel is always running, so you can't update the software while it's running. So you would reboot, restart it, and it goes real quick. It just switches it. So it's not like a Windows machine, which you sit there and wait for 5 or 10 minutes. One other thing you might want to do is change your desktop background. So go to the screen and right click on any area, and it'll give you a bunch of options. You can put your own pictures, or you can pick from their selection. Here I picked the forest path. So now I have my machine with its background, and I'm all ready to go. Linux Mint comes with a lot of software, for instance, LibreOffice, and you can just find it from the software menu. And if on this menu, you also have a preferences, which sets your mouse, like I set my mouse for left-handed use and so forth. See how long before the screen blanks out. And there is other software that you want to use. So those are the big areas. Now let's look at the software manager. So if you pull up the software manager, it's what you might call in your phone is the store, the software store, only everything is free. And so here are some leading software items, and then there's various categories. So if I pick the graphics category, then it'll give me a long list of software in that category. And there are some, like if I want to shorten the category and isolate it just for drawing or just for publishing, or if I want to see them all. So each one of these categories will have these long lists of software that you can pick. And you just click it there and installs it from the repository. You don't have to go anywhere out anywhere else. So in summary, Installing Linux on PC hardware is straightforward if you do this complete takeover and you let Linux Mint do all the work. And to do this, you can do Linux Mint or any of the Ubuntu releases will go about the same way. And most Linux distributions are very user-friendly, lots of software applications available at no cost, vetted, secure. And one thing I like to tell people is take time to understand the open source approach. Any Linux uses the open source approach, which is different from the proprietary approach. And so you need to move around in it and get used to that. The second thing is if you have two computers, this allows you to slowly try out different types of software while you have another computer like your Linux or your Mac computer, and you're going about your daily needs, and you can gradually figure out what Linux software does. Lastly, I'm a big fan of putting Linux on physical hardware rather than virtual hardware. And this will, with an extra machine, will let you see the differences in the stability and the maintenance on a completely different ecosystem. You really are using Linux the way it was designed. Sometimes those are advantages and sometimes those are disadvantages, and you need to see how that works. So anyway, hopefully you've seen that the install is not a big mountain to climb. I've tried to show you the easiest way is to get a machine you can sacrifice and let Linux Mint do its thing, and now you have a machine as a test bed. So there you go.
That's terrific. I did forget to mention in my opening remarks that if you have questions for the presenters, you send those to Judy through the chat box. And then after we're all done and she's all done, then we'll open up for any remaining questions and all. So that's how simple it is. The trick or the hard part is for you to grab an older machine. And as Cal said, you might have an older machine sitting around because you don't know what to do with it. If you have a computer club like mine that is really big into recycling and the refurbishing, they probably have old computers that can't go to Windows 11, but go get it from them and you've got a computer. Those of us in our Linux group at my club, we just love when computers come in that don't have the specs to go to like a Windows 10 or Windows 11, because we just jump right in and said, oh, that's going to make a good Linux one. And so we do. We have both Windows computers and Linux computers that are available, already pre-installed, ready to go. But yeah, check it out. Or I bet you have a friend who's got an old computer that they don't know what to do with. So you just say, hey, I'll take it off your hands. And now you've got one. And Cal, I want to thank you for that good presentation, especially the very last thing you said about being able to have the two different machines and compare how they work. That's great, because I think you'll find that that Linux machine at times works a lot faster and does things quicker than the Windows machine. So great stuff there. All right, so Cal pointed out of some of the default, the software that comes with it. One of the biggest things that people have about why I can't go to Windows or I can't leave Windows and go to Linux is I've got to have Microsoft Office. And that might be the case for somebody who's doing something very unique and very specific, because there's a program that we have in the open source world. It's not just for Linux, it's cross-platform, and I just love it. Love it. And that is LibreOffice. Orv is going to talk to you today about how it works that you can easily leave the Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint world and migrate to the LibreOffice world, because you get all the stuff for free. So we'll let Orv take over on that and share with you my love for LibreOffice and his too.
All right. Let me share my screen.
And I can
How's
tell
that,
you,
John?
it's good. Didn't turn
Okay.
my mic off.
Good deal. LibreOffice has quite a bit of history behind it. It was originally created by a German company. It was called Star-Office, and it was proprietary. It was developed by a company called Star Division. Sun Microsystems bought them in 1999, and Sun was acquired by Oracle in 2009. Oracle's OpenOffice supported the OpenOffice.org XML format and some other stuff, but it was pretty basic. What happened was it was open source at that time, but Oracle was not a good curator of the open source. Eventually, it got to where there were 300 outstanding patches contributed by people, and frustration was growing with Oracle. Being open source, the software is available to anybody, the source code. So a group of coders spun off and created a group called the document something or other. And they took the source code and applied all those patches to it. They asked Oracle if they could use the OpenOffice name, and Oracle gave them the virtual middle finger. So LibreOffice was born. That was in about, oh, I don't know. Let me think, about 2012, something like that. And that was version 3.01, the one that was fully patched. Since then, it's taken off, and it's been steadily improved, widely supported, and people love it, as John said. It's all I've ever used. I can't remember if I've ever had Microsoft Office installed. Anyway, all the LibreOffice components, there's Writer, which is the word processor, Calc, which is the spreadsheet, Impress, which is the presentation, which I'm using now, Draw, which is graphics, Base, which is a database, and Math, which is mathematics. The Math module I've never used. The Base module, the database, I use once a year to update my Christmas card mailing label database. I use Impress all the time for all my presentations. I use Calc a lot and use Writer a lot. I'm only going to talk about the top 2 or 3 today. Feel free to explore the other ones because they all come with it. So it's multi-platform, as you'd expect. All of the Unix clones, FreeBSD, NetBSD, and OpenBSD are supported. Runs on Chromebooks. Runs on all the Apple operating systems, iOS, padOS, iPadOS, and macOS. Runs on Linux and OpenIndiana, which is the open source version of the Sun operating system, Solaris. Oh yeah, it runs on Windows too. General features, read and write documents in open document format and Microsoft can read documents in, this isn't even the total. There's tons of different file formats that it can read and write, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Can export to PDF and Adobe, if anybody still uses Flash, and many more. Too many to go into. This is just a broad overview. If you dive into it and look at the features, you'll be pretty impressed. Writer features, all the usual features you'd expect. Bold, underline, header, footer, bullets. In addition to that, they have wizards that will walk you through more complex operations. Autocorrect and autocomplete. I think I have both of those turned off. Style sheets. If you want to adopt a different style for a set of documents, you can configure the style and apply it to the document. Text frames. And you can display multiple pages while editing. I don't even know if I've ever used that. Publish to HTML and publish to Wiki and all those exports we talked about. As far as calc, all the usual features, pivot tables, natural language formulas, wizards, styles and direct formatting, scenario manager, solver. These are fairly advanced features. 3 different formula syntaxes. You can throw it A1 or R1C1. Read and write all these different file formats. Too many to name. I use CSV a lot. The small gotcha, and it isn't, the default format is the open document format, which is an ISO standard, 26,300. It's a standardized published file document that's formally managed, and when it's updated, the standard is updated. It is not Microsoft's proprietary format. You can change the default under tools and options. You can save your new files in Microsoft formats. The gotcha with Microsoft is they're under no mandate to maintain the same file format. Good luck reading an Office 365 file with Word 95 or even Word 2000. If you send an ODF standard file to someone else who's running a different, say, word processor, but they understand ODF, no problem importing it. And this is true for Microsoft Word too. When you send a document to somebody and you've used a custom font, say, that you've imported and you really like, and they don't have the font installed on their computer, Word will do its best, or any word processor will do its best to substitute a similar font, but it doesn't always come out right. Same thing with images. If you export it to PDF and email that, you can be assured that what they get is what you want them to see. Additionally, if you have concerns about that file being edited and passed along, use PDFs, much safer. So where do you get it? LibreOffice.org. There's 2 files, the LibreOffice and the help file. They're separate downloads. You download both and you install them. There's tons of templates available for, what did I grab recently? A expense report document, and I use that. We probably have time for some show and tell, right, John?
Yes.
Okay. This is my presentation I just gave, and I'm running Impress. You can see that up here at the top. Over here, it's got all this.
Nope. Time out.
Oh.
Can't see it.
Oh, because I just stopped sharing. My bad.
Yep.
Dummy. Hang on. Let me get over there. Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Okay. I moved this thing. Oh, well. Anyway, this is the presentation I just gave in Impress. And you can see there's toolbars up here. You can change the toolbar. There's 3 different kinds. There's the ribbon and a couple of others. Honestly, I use the default and it works fine for me. All the file, edit, view, all the things you'd expect you'd need from PowerPoint. I can't move that over there. You can see on the right, you can select various layouts for images and text. A nice thing about this, if I want to run, say I want to edit or create a new word processor document, you can go over File, New, and you can just start it from here. You don't need to start up Word Writer. Well, I lost it here. File, New. Oops, File, New. Don't drop down, or all of these different document types. Additionally, like pretty much everything else, it has a list of recent documents, and you can clear them out here. So let's see, here's the one I just recently showed. An ODT document, like I've got highlighted here, is an open document text document. And this is just a how-to for using a ham radio program. Bold, embedded images. I've got a footer here. This is a relatively simple document, but it's 99.9% compatible with Windows documents, and every release they add a little bit more. So importing Word documents, unless they're huge multi-master documents, good luck with that. Of course, Word has trouble with that too. So I'll close this one. Oh yeah. And then I'll go back and say, I want to open a spreadsheet. And this is a spreadsheet I keep with some ham radio metrics in it. It doesn't really matter what they are, but it's the number of nodes on our ham radio network. And I've got, here, let me expand it a little bit. There, you can see historically, this is just 2022, and I've got older years back there. And I do convert, let me make them a little smaller there. I do convert them into graphs for my metrics, monthly metrics report. I still struggle with graphs a bit, but that's me, that's not LibreOffice. You can do all you want with it. So it's free. I encourage you to check it out. And the nice thing is, if you're running Linux on LibreOffice, you can run Windows on LibreOffice and not have to worry about transferring files back and forth. Quick and dirty. Also, it'll cost you some time. Back to you, John. You're muted, John. Yeah,
Yep,
there you go.
there we go. That's great. I even share the story that my first experience way back in the early 2000s with open source was through Install-Orv. And I found out about it, and it must have been right at the time when it was making the switch and became open source. And the first one I got, it cost me. Somebody might say, wait a second, open source cost? I had to pay $1 for the CD that was sent to me. So that was really not, that was just for the media. And as a teacher, I had, like 200 computers in my building. The contract with them is for $1 to buy that CD, you can install it on as many computers as you want. I did that. We were running it. And then from Install-Orv, we were running OpenOffice. My students had no problem. I was teaching middle school using that. They just created it like crazy. The mistake I made with the faculty was I didn't change the default saving program for them to Microsoft, because when they would do papers for college classes and they would send it to their professors, well, of course, Microsoft can't open up Open Document. It would all be garbled. So they forced me to move it back to that other brand, but it's great. And as I tell people in my presentations, it's free. Give it a try. If it can't do something that you really need it to do that Microsoft Word could do, okay, purchase Microsoft Word and admit to the fact that you're using all that money to buy that feature, because everything else you do, it's free. And
John,
yeah,
there's a ton of LibreOffice documentation out there, not only the formal documentation, but there isn't any question you can ask about LibreOffice that hasn't already been asked and answered.
Yeah. So I tell people, give it a try. I have been using LibreOffice, OpenOffice Star for many years. And if it's missing something, I haven't noticed it. Judy, you had your hand up,
Yep.
which is a little bit out of sequence, but go ahead.
Well, I have a writer story too.
Okay.
Years and years ago, the members of my group said, can we have a presentation on writer? I said, why not? So I downloaded it. I didn't look at it. And I taught Word for 1,000 years, and I opened up the program in front of everybody. There was only one thing I couldn't find. I could have stepped right into using Writer with absolutely no problem at all. And I'm a heavy user of Word on a daily basis. So I thought that was way cool. My oldest daughter's husband's dad wanted a new computer. So back in the day, I bought him a Windows 10. We took it down. I installed everything, and he was too cheap to pay for the Office suite. So I installed Writer, changed it to the drop-down menu system, and with a straight face called it Word. And he was using what we use, the Chinese menu system, dropping down and clicking. He's still using it and thinks it's Word. He had absolutely no problem with that.
Yeah.
End of stories.
Yep. So, you know, it's being cross-platform. It's another one of my big things about making the switch from Windows to Linux, is that if you're used to using it in Windows, there's no learning curve or anything else to go the change on that. I want to do a shout out and thank Donna. Work with Donna a lot. Sent me an article or a web address, because I've always said there might be differences between Office and LibreOffice that I don't know and I haven't missed or whatever. And she sent me a link to a very comprehensive comparison between the two that listed what they could both do and what one could do and the other couldn't do. And I can still go back to my same comments. All of the stuff that I found out that either Microsoft couldn't do that LibreOffice could do, or vice versa, were all things that were stuff I had no idea what they're talking about. It was so complex and so whatever. So, you know, yep, there's some things. The biggest things would be when Word can interact with another Microsoft proprietary product. LibreOffice, you know, obviously can't do that. So, you know, give it a try. And that way, all of you who switch, remember that if you put your files on a thumb drive or an external hard drive, move them to that new Linux machine, copy them back over into the Linux folders for documents, pictures, movies, music, and stuff. It'll open up all of them right away. And unless it's some kind of a unique feature, you won't even hardly know you're different. So Donna, thanks for that. And I'll try to give that to Judy, that link to put in the follow-up. But like I said, I read clear through it. I'm going, I have no clue what they're talking about, but, oh, okay, that's nice that this can do it and that can do it. All right, so we're on to software. So the other big thing that a beginner wants to know is, well, what do I use to do my everyday work? You're all focused on the generic programs that came with Windows all these same years, and Windows now is changing names for their software. But basically, every computer comes with just about all the software you need. You don't even have to go out and get stuff. So Dave Melton's going to share with you a lot of his everyday computer doings and what programs that, and of course we're using Cinnamon or Mint Cinnamon because it's one of the most easiest programs or operating systems to use. And he's going to share with us and talk about software. What do you do? You know, what do you do for this job, that job, or whatever? So Dave, we're over to you on this.
Okie dokie. Thanks, John. I'll share my screen and we'll give it a shot. So I think you're seeing my screen now.
I see your presentation program.
Are you not seeing my Linux Mint login?
Yes, but not on full screen.
Oh, well, here, let me full screen it.
Thank you.
So here, what I've tried to do is leave it as generic as possible. And all I really changed, well, I added stuff to the dock at the bottom, and I changed the background just because I was poking around and wanted to see how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. It's in screensaver mode. Unlike Cal, I used a very simple password because this is a virtual machine. And I wanted to be able to log in and out easily. So here you see, as Cal showed, here is the main window. When you've installed from your flash drive a copy of Cinnamon, and this is the latest version I downloaded, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Put it on a thumb drive and installed it on a virtual, actually I didn't put it on a thumb drive, I used an ISO and installed it in a virtual machine so I could share it today. So one of the things that, well, a few of the things that Linux Mint Cinnamon isn't is something, it's not a specialized program. It's for daily users, so that we have all the basics that we need to do whatever it is we do on a day-to-day basis. If you're more interested in super gaming, you can find a Linux version of with gaming apps that are built in. You can also have an Ubuntu Studio if you want to do specialized graphics or video, audio, that kind of stuff. And I even found a version of Ubuntu called EduBuntu, which is specific for education. So it comes with education apps in it. Linux Mint 21 is based on the long-term support of Ubuntu. So you're getting the latest distribution as of whenever you downloaded it. As I said, it's a general desktop environment. You got your start button and all your apps are here that come pre-installed. I have not added anything to this distro on purpose because I wanted you to see exactly what comes with it. There are some things I would add to it, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So what else can I share? So I would recommend, and we've already talked about this, is when you burn your ISO and you boot it, I would recommend running it from the ISO, from the boot on your flash drive, and poke around and see what you actually get before you commit to it and do what Cal did, which is wipe out a machine and start from there. So I mean, you're going to find it to be slightly slower running from your USB drive, but you're going to get everything that it has. except for saving any documents that you create, unless you create a boot disk that is persistent. And there are programs out there that will do that. The one I created a USB drive to try what Cal was talking about, but I created it with a persistent partition. So I have been able to create documents and download files and that kind of stuff. And next time I boot it, it has all that data already on it. So I can move that from computer to computer, and I have the exact same thing I had last time. So many of the things you can do, for instance, one of the things that comes with Linux Mint is Firefox. I don't particularly care for Firefox, but again, I didn't want to have something on this computer that didn't come with it. So one of the things I really enjoy doing in Linux is using the virtual desktops. So if you right click here on Firefox, I can move it to, for instance, workspace 4. And that leaves workspace 1 here for me to do what I would do more commonly. So if I go over to workspace 4, you can use your control and left and right arrow keys. And here it shows you, I hope you can see the pop-up that says workspace 1, 2, 3, or 4. So for instance, if I want to have something running all the time, like my email, I would move it off into a different workspace and then go back to workspace 1 for more of the common stuff that I might be doing. One of the things you can do is a file manager, and it comes with it, and it's like Windows file manager, but better. And I've read recently that Windows is talking about adding some of these features. For example, you can open a new tab. I like having 2 tabs open to be able to look at different folders. For example, if I wanted to go to my documents folder in the second tab, or my home folder in the primary tab. I can also do something like this and press enter. I can highlight, this is drag, just like you do in Windows. Press enter in this case, and this opened up all 3 of those documents for me. Just drag them into the editor that comes with Mint, and look at it, and it's Xed, and that just comes standard. This is the basic editor that comes with Mint. Now it's lacking a few things, but it's way better than Notepad, Windows Notepad. So I would download another app that I'm more used to using and install it, but that's not the topic today. Another thing, well, I'm going to move to desktop 2 here, clear space a little bit, and you can go to, for instance, if I wanted to play music, well, I can't play a music file because of my virtual machine, the sound doesn't work, but I could show you a video. Well, the sound doesn't work on that either, but it's not Mint because I can see it playing in Mint. It's my virtual machine setup, and I haven't figured that out yet. I'm new at that too. So you can hear in sound and video, Rhythm Box, for example. You can open a video. Let's see. It's probably easier. Let me try that again. If I go here and I go to videos and click on this movie, it'll open up in the default player that comes with Mint. And again, I have no sound, but the video works just fine. It's a little bit jerky, I'm sure, because of Zoom and the virtual machine. But at any rate, you can see what I'm talking about just as a default application. Another one that I do regularly is I have a terminal open and running, and I can move it to another desktop so that it's easier to see. But for instance, I will have here I can do, I have my regular desk. This is my home folder, and you can see that I'm on my machine. And as well as being able to open another tab, and I can SSH or log into another machine. So what I have open here is a machine that I use as, you can see it's called Omada Controller, and it is my network management tool. Just to let you know that I'm actually on that machine, I can type host name and you can see the name of the machine, as opposed to this one, which is my Cinnamon machine right here. So I like this tool. It's simple. It's called GNOME Terminal, and it just comes with Mint. Yeah, that's so many of the tools that I use on a regular basis are just built right in, which is really nice. One of the things that I wanted to show you was, let's see here. Oh, you can change your backgrounds, and Cal went into this, but you can also do your software manager, and Cal went into this one as well, but I just wanted to show it to you live. Hopefully it'll come up. So Cal mentioned graphics, for example. You can go directly to that. Here's an app I would install. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to take the time to do that. What else can I show you here? I'm going to go back to desktop 1. Actually, if I go to 3 here, you can see I have a complete blank screen again, and I can bring up, for instance, a utility. I will type in keyboard here, so I don't have to find it. And it find it for me. One of the things that I really like about Linux, and in particular Mint here, is when I go from desktop to desktop, the default is Control and left or right arrow. You can also set up shortcuts. So I can go to Workspaces and click on the shift to the workspace to the right or to the left. And with shortcuts, or why am I having trouble with that? It allows you, it's telling you what you can use, but you can also assign keys to workspaces. For instance, I have assigned alternate and 1 to go to workspace 1, or alt and 2 to go to workspace 3. So you could go directly, instead of going arrow, 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 you can go directly to that other screen. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Mint and the way they've set things up and allow you to make subtle changes, but handy changes. Here's I wanted to show you here, like if we go to Office, and well, before I do that, down here on the taskbar, as Cal said, here's your system tray, and you can see he mentioned the orange dot. And if I click on that, it's telling me I have 12 updates available, and I can just run that in the background while I'm doing other things. The other thing is, I feel like I'm just skipping around here. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to do that to confuse people. So I wanted to share with you system settings. Right here. And actually it's over here in my favorites bar already. I did not put that there. It came installed that way. So here's the panel. You can make changes to the panel if you wanted it to be smaller or larger or centered or right side, all those kind of things. I like it the way it is, so I'm not going to change it, but I just wanted to show you that. There's other in Windows, for example. You can decide how you want the buttons to work on your mouse and how you want it to change the windows or the title bar. Here's backgrounds. It comes with a whole bunch of stuff. One of them, here's your standard Mint stuff. And then Vanessa. Vanessa is the release of Mint 21, or my own pictures. I can change the background to one of my pictures, for example. And again, this is all just stock things that come right away built in. I showed you the X editor and Firefox. I showed you SSH to another computer. Why am I not seeing that? Here it is. You can configure shortcut keys. I mentioned that. Oh, another thing it has is a system monitor that comes built in. System monitor. Now this is like Windows Task Manager, but a little bit nicer. And it is set, I think the default is 3 seconds, so it will update every 3 seconds. And you can see that this particular one is changing here a little bit. Sometimes it's nice to see, I use the system monitor when I'm having trouble with something. It's nice to see what's going on in the background and why is the machine running so slow, and you'll find some app that's running and clogging up your machine. Another thing I wanted to show you was let's pick Office here, and I'll add Calc to my, not the favorites panel, but to the panel, and you'll see it shows up right here. And again, you could add it. Again, Calc, and I can add it to to favorites. And then I go back to favorites, and you see that it's added it to my favorites. So on a day-to-day basis, I use a terminal type of tool to go check my other computers that are busy monitoring my network or my sprinklers or whatever else, a backup server, which I happen to have running at the moment on another machine, on a Linux machine, actually. And I'll have my browser open and I'm doing some research or something. Typically, most of us will have email open. if we're at our computer, can have that running in the background as well. And again, I left this pretty generic so that you can see once you install it, what you have. I think that's really about it, John. I can unshare my screen, stop sharing. And I hope I gave a reasonable overview of a day-to-day usage and what comes with Mint.
Yeah, I think you did. I think the big point would be that if somebody sent you a file, you'd be able to open it.
Correct.
It would be very unlikely, unless it's a very unique type of file, that you couldn't open it. And that's happened, you know, when at our repair, we have a repair help desk that meets. Somebody would bring in a file and it can't be opened. And so we'd have to go online, find out what kind of a program opens this file, and find out, well, that hasn't been made in so many years, or we can find a program. And what's nice about open source, no money outlay, you could probably just go and find a program that would do that.
That's probably true.
Now, I do want to make sure that I point out that even though David mentioned and showed the terminal, that you do not, as a Linux user, you do not have to use that terminal ever. There are some people that use Linux all the time and they've never gone, you know, to the terminal. And I know that a lot of people, that's what they get afraid of it. They see this terminal thing and it's not something they used in Windows. And so they're saying, oh, I can't go to Linux because I can't do that. You do not have to do that. What I will say in advanced things is that as people learn things you can do in the terminal, then, you know, you start using it. But as a rule, the operating system comes just like that and you go with it and works great.
Yeah, I agree with that, John. You don't have to use the terminal. I was just trying to show that I was able to connect to another computer using the stock terminal that comes with Mint.
Right. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I just didn't want to scare anybody off. Yeah.
Yeah, on a real basis, I use a different program for that, but the stock stuff that comes with it works just fine.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, so as he said, it comes with it, but with open source, there's the beauty of it. There are a number of programs that all do the same thing, and you have the fun and joy of going out and finding this is the one I like. Of course, the VLC is the universal top one that does everything. But in terms of audio program, it comes with one, but we have a bunch out there. You go out and find the one that you like the best and easiest for you to work. And for anything, for graphics, for, you know, all that, it's out there. But stock, it comes ready to go.
Which is what's the good thing. I mean, you can use the stock stuff that comes with Mint, and you're up and running, and then you decide, oh well, it doesn't do X. I'm going to go look for something a little better.
Right. And along with that, not just Linux Mint Cinnamon, but all three of the Mint company pretty much is now universal. Excuse me. That Mint Mate, Mint XFC, and Mint Cinnamon are now pretty much using the same programs across the board. But if you go to Ubuntu and their family, they have the same kind of programs, work the same way, but might have a little different name. But each of these distros come out ready to go. Nothing needed to be added until you decide you want something better for you. Anything from Judy?
Yes, could you close the chat box for me?
I can do that.
You're too kind. Cal, can you use a password manager instead of having to type your password so many times?
Yeah.
No, you always type your password for system access.
Password managers mostly work for web-based things when you go on the internet, but you could go through the trouble of, if you have, you know, like both Bitwarden and a few others have on client or on board, open it up, go to that setting, copy it, and go over and paste it. But I think that gets to be more of a problem than just typing in the password when you need it. It's a security feature in Linux.
Okay, thank you. Another question for Cal. When Mint installs the multimedia codecs on installation, does that include the decryption codec LIB64 DVD CSS2 for the playback of DVD movies?
I don't know.
I believe it does. And I will let you know, to be honest, that at some point in time, you might see a legal notification saying that in order to download this, you should be in a country that allows it. And if it doesn't, you shouldn't, but you can't.
Can I add on to that a little bit?
Please do.
The movie that I was showing there, The Saint, is a DVD movie that I happen to have, and it was playing just fine. And I didn't do anything special except for the installation that Cal talked about.
Very good, thank you. And this is a very excellent comment about Cal's presentation. My old computer is a Toshiba with 8.1. Can I install Linux on it? You said use your neighbor's old computer, whatever. How about an old 8.1 Windows?
Yep.
Sure. It's 8.1 is fairly modern. And if it has, so 8.1, you probably have 4 gigabits of RAM, which is what I recommend that you would have. But no problem.
And
Yeah.
Judy, adding to that, I recently did that for my brother-in-law. He was running 8.0 or 1 on his old computer, and I put a Linux distro on his computer, and it made a world of difference.
Yeah, and the other comment is, it doesn't matter what Windows version is on there. It's what are the specs of the computer. And Cal's always said the best thing you do is put Linux on a thumb drive, plug it into the computer that you want to do, and see how it goes.
Correct.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether it's 8.1, XP, it's the hardware that's the concern.
And what you guys are talking about, this comment is, no computer is sacrificed when Linux is installed.
Yeah,
Comma, keeping them out of the recycle place.
absolutely.
Okay, this was for Orv, but feel free to anybody answer it. Does LibreOffice allow simultaneous editing by multiple sharing editors of a document in the cloud like Google Docs?
LibreOffice isn't in the cloud, so it can't do what Google Docs does because Google Docs is in the cloud. LibreOffice is an installed program like the regular Windows when you install it on your computer.
So if you have a bunch of people with LibreOffice, you don't have a share with thing that you could share your document with all of them, and they could add their comments in a different color?
You can have multiple editors, and it keeps track and all that. It just doesn't do it in the cloud online.
Got it. This question is for Dave. What are the minimum hardware requirements for running Linux? What is optimal? We already talked about that, 4 gigabytes.
We did, but the virtual machine I happen to be running today is running with 2 gigabytes and a 30 gig hard drive. And it's running on a i5 with a bunch of other virtual machines on it. And it runs really pretty okay.
How long have you had that?
6 or 9 months, I guess.
Oh, really? Okay.
The other comment too, even though we're talking about Mint and Mint Cinnamon. There are a lot of other versions, like for example, even Mint XFCE would be a better one to use if you have an older computer. And we have other Linux distros that are designed for even older that have even less requirements. So we can find you something. If you have a 2 gig something, we can find you something that's going to run it pretty amazingly for 2 gig. But if you have 4 gigs, well, then you can run these. If you have 8 gigs, wow.
Yeah. So last month I mentioned that Linux Mint, generally I recommend you have 60 or 80 gigabyte hard drive because of the time shift method that it takes to save the operating system. So if you have a smaller hard drive, generally 20 gigs will do it. Something like Ubuntu was my recommendation. That's 2 gigs and 20 gigabytes hard drive. I would suggest Ubuntu. And if you have a 4 gig and enough hard drive, 60 or 80, then Linux Mint, you can do it completely. But it's not because it runs slow, it's because of the memory when it saves the restore points.
And again, we can always refer back to going to distrowatch.com, and you can find out specifically, say, I want a Linux that is low RAM or low whatever, and they usually give you a list of ones to pick from.
Right.
John, Cal's article on time shift is one of the ones that is included in Push. Dave, if you have multiple screens, can you open different workspaces on a second screen?
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't tried it. I imagine.
What was the question?
If you have 2 screens, can you open a different workspace on the second screen?
That's a really good question. Have to figure that out.
Well, part of it depends on how you're sharing the screen, whether it's an extension or whether it's a mirror. And if it's a mirror, it's going to match exactly what you have on that. So I would say that the extension, so you can have 2 different things running at the same time on 2 different screens.
There's 2 windows on the same workspace showing on 2 different screens if it's extended.
Yeah,
that's how you could set it up.
Right. I think they were trying to say, if I had screen 1, could I be watching workspace 1? On screen 2, can I watch workspace 3?
Right.
But
I think the workspace would extend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer sounds like it's really a no. You couldn't have 2 different workspaces on 2 different screens.
But since your screen is twice as big, you can have the windows being half-sized.
Exactly.
In a sense.
Yep. And you don't need the virtual workspace then.
If you can keep up with
it.
Well, since I don't have 2 monitors, I don't have to worry about that.
That's right. You can use your virtual desktops.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. A workshop recommendation. Maybe we can find somebody who would like to give this presentation. System snapshots, how to configure them, how to maintain them, and a live demo of restoring a snapshot to a freshly installed installation of Linux so that you have fully recovered to your previous configuration.
I've done that twice in the last couple of months.
Oh my gosh, we have somebody who has hands-on experience with having that problem.
And I have to say is that it goes back to almost identical procedure as you did with restore points. Only I could never get restore points to work. I would pick them and it said there's no restore point there. But yeah, that could be a definite workshop coming up in the new year.
too cool. And that happened with that dumb expensive Dell I bought. It would never let me create a restore point, but it was always my fault, according to Dell. We are open for live Q&A if you have more questions.
Let me get everybody there. And if you have something you'd like to share and talk about, hit that reactions button and raise your virtual hand so that you go to the top of the list like Jerry just did, so that we know who you are in this big list.
I like Ungerman's background. Hopefully he'll send it to me.
So Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me lower my hand while I'm, I wanted to say first, I have looked at LibreOffice. It really is incredibly awesome. My problem is that I have Microsoft Office and 90% of my usage is Outlook. So I use it for email, I use it for calendar, you know, so I can't, I could probably put in LibreOffice if I had Outlook running somewhere else, you know, but I don't know if you can buy Outlook by itself.
Okay, let me just jump in. What you want to look at is evolution.
Okay.
It would be the counterpart for the original Outlook. It's your email, calendar, task, contacts. So check the evolution.
Thanks, John. I'll look at that. So that would be my big, although I'm really committed to Windows, although I use Linux every now and then. I have several Linux virtual machines, and I was a Unix sysadmin back in the day for several years. So, but, and I had one more thing I was going to mention. Oh, regarding the install, putting an ISO on a USB, you can just copy that. But if you're working with a machine that has no image on it, you've got to make that USB bootable. Now, is Rufus going to do that?
Yes.
Okay. The question is, so Rufus would make, if you put the ISO on the USB, you could point Rufus at it and it would make it bootable to bring in that ISO. Is my understanding correct?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dave. Let you.
You would, obviously, if you're running Rufus, you have a running machine already.
Yes.
So you would have the ISO and Rufus on the same machine. Probably you would have your ISO in your downloads folder. You would run Rufus and say, my ISO is in downloads, create this USB from it.
Okay.
And make the USB bootable.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. But you have to, but then you have to reboot the machine and direct it to the thumb drive to get it to boot to that. Otherwise, you're just going to open it up in a virtual type machine.
Okay, that I understand. I understand about changing boot sources.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do I get this Ubiquity program?
Oh, well, Cal, you said that, so you could answer that.
Ubiquity is the installer that when you say install Linux Mint, different Linux distros, it's part of the install.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one thing nice about the Ubiquity, because there are Linux installers that are totally non-graphical, they're totally text-based, and you have to go through and pick this and do this and pick this and do this. The newer ones like Ubiquity, as Cal showed, was very easy. Answer a few questions, they do all the work.
Okay, then I still use Terminal when I get on Linux. I use Terminal fairly often because came up through the various Red Hat stuff like that back in the day, and I was using Terminal all the time. So I must prefer ls-la to some kind of graphic Explorer display, you know.
Give you a double thumbs up for that. And that's, again, that's something that as a Linux user learns some of these little things you can do with the terminal. I found out that for my VPN that I use, I can work it a lot easier and faster with a couple of terminal commands than using the graphical user interface to work it. So you find things that you like, and then you start using it a little bit more.
And one last thing, I am impressed with Mint. I've used Ubuntu, I've used Red Hat, I've used in virtual machines, and Mint is by far and away the best out there right now.
Thank you.
For somebody that's not a Linux, hasn't been in Linux for 15 years, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there are a couple of good ones. I was just reading an article about what some of the best ones are, and along with Mint, they also said for the MX Linux is a very easy, good one to use too, and Zorin too.
Thank you.
Sure,
Ron?
thanks, Jerry.
Yes, question here. When I go to install, when I go to put in my thumb drive, I get this message. It says selected boot image do not authenticate. Press enter to continue. So when I do that, the machine shuts off. I did a diagnostic test. The hard drive's fine, and I have 8 gigs of RAM.
Okay, you're doing this on a thumb drive.
Yes.
This
And
is
you're-
Windows 11?
No.
Okay, and the thumb drive has what operating system on it?
Linux Mint 21. Cinnamon.
Okay. And did you make it with Etcher? Or
Yes.
If you are having a mental health emergency, you may call the Access and Crisis
somebody needs to mute, please.
Yeah,
479-3339.
Okay, so the thumb drive should have been bootable okay. And how far do you get when you put it in and it boots up?
It just comes up with this error message. Well, it's not even an error message. It says selected boot image did not authenticate. Please enter to continue. When I hit enter, my machine just shuts down.
Okay, you're doing it on a Windows machine.
Yes.
Do you have secure boot turned off?
Yes.
Legacy USB,
I'm sorry.
legacy USB in the BIOS.
Yes, you can see it.
No, you changing it from the modern day to the old fashioned booting process at legacy. That's a second setting that sometimes you have to make in the BIOS besides secure boot. It's in a sense, it says turn off UEIF.
Okay. And one other question. I use the same thumb drive, and I did get it to install on an old Lenovo machine, but it supposedly has a built-in camera on this laptop, but it's not working. So when I plug in a USB camera, it works. But is there any way to find out if you have a camera installed? Because when I went into the diagnostics, it said that everything's enabled. So that means I see it enabled, that tells me it's working. It's not
Okay.
grayed out.
Try downloading a program called Cheese.
I did, and I
Okay.
still can't get it to work.
Okay, my first answer would be that the webcam on that laptop has gone south.
Okay,
If you can plug in a camera and it works, then it's got to be the webcam that's on that computer. And old things do go bad like that, and the sound and the Wi-Fi. So great, I'm glad you're trying it out.
okay, thank you.
Mike,
Just a comment on the older hardware. We talked about the processor a little bit. We talked about the RAM, but if we're talking about a really old computer, we might be going back to a 32-bit computer. In fact, I've even installed Linux on a netbook, so I guess that's a 16-bit computer.
wow.
The key is when you're going to a place like DistroWatch and you do have an old computer, if at all possible, know what the configuration is, whether you're 32-bit or 16-bit or 64-bit. And then look for a distro that matches that. Yeah,
And go ahead,
Well,
Dave.
doing a computer even with 32-bit is becoming less and less frequent nowadays. But there's still an awful lot of old ones out there. I got a stack of them behind me. Yeah.
Okay.
Rod,
Hey, I got 2 questions. In LibreOffice, does calc include conditional formatting?
Yes.
Good, glad to hear it. Second question, In LibreOffice Writer, do you know if you can embed zip files?
No,
You can't embed them, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. No. Does anybody else know?
Never done it.
Okay. All right, thanks. I'll keep looking.
Yeah, I would say use my friend DuckDuckGo and ask the question there and see what pulls up. Or go to LibreOffice and they have I think a forum, and you can ask that question there.
Okay,
I wonder if you could just drag it in and see what happens. Drag in the zip file.
I think in Microsoft Word, I had to insert it, if I'm not mistaken. I forget
Okay.
exactly what I did. I'll have to check that out.
Okay.
I Googled it and the answer seems to be no.
Thank you.
Welcome.
At this point in time.
That is true. Joel.
Or Jay Owens.
No, it's Joel. Joel from UChug. Joel, will you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you.
There you go.
Two things. One, I'm using Linux Mint, an older version of Linux Mint Mate, and or Mate, whichever it is. Also,
Mate.
I have Mint 18 or 19. Can I update it, or do I have to do a whole new install?
19 will go up to, I think, 21, but sometimes you have to go from 18 to 19 to 20. My recommendation is if you're going for version, a couple of versions back, save your data files and do a clean install, because you're running some programs that were designed for 18. They may have been remodeled for 21, and those back then won't work. I know when I did a test upgrade that it will come up and some of the programs I had on my computer, it would not upgrade. I had to go out and get the newest version of that program to match with the 2021.
The answer is you cannot upgrade from, do an in-place upgrade from 18 to 19 or 19 to 20. And the first time you can do it is from 20 to 21.
Thanks for
And
reminding
you
me.
had to be in 20.3 to go from 20.3 to 21. So if you're in 18, the answer is you have to do a fresh install.
Okay, so this is an older machine. There's nothing on it except the operating system.
Oh,
So-
perfect.
Perfect.
Just, yeah, burn yourself a new thumb drive for 20.
Just wipe it out and
21.
install it clean.
Thank you,
Yep.
sir. And Mate, Link versus Mate or Mate.
Mate.
Any idea about that?
I prefer Mate. I
Okay.
like them. I like the menu system. I like the file manager a little bit better than the one that's in Cinnamon, and it's all just a preference.
Okay,
But
thank you.
yeah,
Jerry.
Let me unmute. Yes, I had an observation and a suggestion for a future Wednesday program. Somebody that's really familiar with Universal Extensible Firmware Interface, or UEFI, versus legacy boot. I'm still running legacy. I've been somewhat reluctant to switch over for fear I'd get myself in a big morass. Like, for example, I never turned on the TPM, and I never turned that on my machine. It's just still off. And because once you turn it on, it's hard to get it off. So, but I do use legacy. But somebody told me the other day that UEFI is actually faster than legacy. I don't know if that's true or not. That seems hard to believe, but anyway, I'll stop talking. So yeah, if somebody could spend a few minutes in the future talking about the gritty details of all that. And I don't know, I mean, I like grit. So, you know, that's fine.
I recommend that you look at our September session.
September session.
Yeah, the September workshop that Judy sends out.
Yeah, I didn't, I don't remember one. I'll go back. I signed up for most of them. Maybe I didn't sign up for the one, so I didn't get it, Judy. Oh, there's one I missed, and I sent you an email to please send me the stuff, but I didn't, don't remember that one, so maybe that's the one I missed.
I covered that to a reasonable degree in September.
All right, okay. Then I can ask Judy right now if she would find that and send you the.
I wrote it down,
Thank
and
you.
you have the Outlook question, correct?
No, I didn't.
You didn't.
Oh, well, I mean, I did say that I'm absolutely, I can't live without Outlook. I mean,
Right, well, you can use it as a standalone program. I just sent you, I will now send you a link to the article I found.
Oh, well, I know it'll run probably standalone. I don't know whether you can buy it standalone or not, but anyway. But that's a moot because I have Office 2021 installed on my machine. So
Well, the other question is you can't use it on Linux.
that's true.
Oh, there you go.
Well, except you can use Outlook online.
Yeah, Outlook.com.
Yes,
That's true.
It used to be Hotmail.
Yes.
But does it have the full features of the downloaded, Outlook program? That's what I think he's looking for.
Yeah.
Well, and the problem is, and I admit to being strange about this, most people would regard this as somewhat paranoid, but I have a set of rules. First of all, I never, ever store a single byte of my personal data in the cloud anywhere. Okay, number one. So I can't use any system that, I don't have a choice on email because Google's handling that for me. And they know more about me than I know about myself. But that's the price I pay for a powerful free email service.
And John, what email, and Ungerman, what email would you suggest he use?
Proton Mail.
They don't care who you are. They're not interested in who you are.
Okay. I'm getting ready to switch to the Brave, not Brave, the browser that doesn't, I can't find it now. I have it on my desktop here somewhere.
Brave browser also.
Thank you. The one that doesn't keep track of what you're doing.
Right.
So,
And I will send you the workshop video where I think Mr. Ungerman gave us a presentation, or John did, on Proton Mail.
okay, excellent. And also the one about the UEFI from September, please. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Judy. You
Welcome.
people are the best. You people are the best. Incredible service, which is free.
Not totally free, part
No.
of your APCUG membership benefits.
Oh, that's true. I am an AP.
And I'll do a plug, remind your officers that we are getting to renewal time for 2023. Be watching your mail for that, so you can continue all of these benefits.
I guess I should set something out because renewal starts November 1st and the deadline is December 31st. And we give you a grace month of January. February 1st, you're off the Christmas list.
Okay.
And I think we've already had a couple groups renew already.
Yeah,
But you're talking about the Phoenix PC user group that I belong to.
you got it.
Yeah,
So,
Dave should renew. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
yeah,
make sure to say, hey,
light a fire under him.
Yep.
Andy,
Hi, just a couple of quick comments. Number one, to each of the presenters, great presentations.
thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Just throwing in some 2 cents. When I've talked to people about Linux, usually it's, what are you doing on the computer, especially retirees? Oh, they use it for web browsing, email, just internet stuff and the rest of it, where Linux is completely custom made. But I try to talk to them a little bit about some of the open source stuff. Yeah, LibreOffice is an obvious one, but for many people, if you've not been a regular computer user, starting with Linux is a no-brainer because you don't know anything about Windows either. So you're starting from scratch. But if you're a tried and true Windows user, maybe you just retired after 10 years of using Windows at work, the transition not only is easy, but it's something you can do. I know in my case, we had a lockdown desktop at work. You have a couple of thousand users around the country, you can't install whatever you want. And you could use anything as long as it had the Microsoft stamp of approval on it. But with Linux, think of it as my test environment. Before they released new software at work, everything went through their regression testing, acceptance testing. So when I started with Linux, a lot of it was trial and testing. And then I came to find out with the open source stuff that there was something that ran on Linux that was really, really cool. And that's when I drew the line in the sand, and I only use any software that's cross-platform. So VLC is a perfect example.
Mhm.
The base multimedia tools on a Windows install are, I think this is a technical term, are crap. But you can get into VLC, Evolution on the as an Outlook replacement. There are a boatload of utilities. I think the last time I looked in one of the repositories, it was like 50,000 different software packages. So you can try it on your Linux box. If it looks good, you know, there are 47 different choices for PDF readers. Well, now you can narrow it down by saying, what can I run on Linux that's also going to run on my Windows machine? And kind of take it from there.
Thank you.
And I would add also that one of the things that's nice about with Linux, it's being free, you can have virtual machines that you can use just to try out stuff to see how you like it, so you don't have to worry about it doing something bad to your computer. So yeah, there are so many.
Yeah, the virtual machines are fun, but they carry their own
Yes.
baggage, trying to get whether it's Oracle's VirtualBox or whatever up and running. But one of the first open source or cross-platform, two of the first cross-platform big style applications that I used were Dia and Scribus.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would maybe twice a year have need for doing some sort of a flow chart, and Visio was great. But Visio was a separate, even with as an employee, the license was like $150. Well, to do 2 drawings a year, I don't want to drop $150. Dia did the same thing. So I tried that. Scribus, well, Microsoft Publisher, great, all the templates, wonderful. But if you're doing a once every quarter newsletter and you just like the idea of desktop publishing, Scribus is a free download. You run it on Linux. Oh, wait a minute, that also runs on Windows?
Mm-hmm.
You can put it over there. So there are a lot of things that you can do through Linux that you wouldn't even think about doing on Windows.
John, there's an article in the Push collection on Scribus.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy did say, he's a member of Brookdale's group, and he did say there is quite a learning curve with it, is the only problem. And Drew King from the Central Florida Computer Society uses Language Tool instead of Grammarly, because Language Tool is open source, and he wonders why I pay for Grammarly. And John's going to check it out and let me know what he thinks about it. So do we have any more questions? Oh, by the way, Andy, thank you for the thank you. We have been doing this since May of 2020. And back in the day when I'm on my soapbox, okay?
Yeah.
Back in the day when we started this, I would get emails with thank you so much, blah, 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 blah. I don't get those anymore. And in my opinion, this is just expected. It's just something that we do. John's nodding his head yes. Dave can nod his head too, and I know Orv, but that's all the workshops. I very seldom get any thank yous on it. And I know you guys haven't forgotten your manners, but it helps if we, have some acknowledgement of the time and energy that our presenters put together with their presentations. And maybe that would make them more interested in coming back and doing another one. But I've just, like I said, I've noticed over the years, it's just gone. And when I get one, I send it to all of the presenters, and that I'm off my soapbox now.
Yeah, we enjoy doing this.
We don't have
Sometimes
anything else to do on Wednesday mornings.
But well, I'm saying we enjoy the Linux ones, but we're running out of ideas. I will say that we're going to be back with part 3 next month and try to wrap up anything that we think we haven't covered with respects to switching to Linux from the Windows user's point of view. And then next year, we'll try to get back to more topics like the snapshots, distros, but a lot of it will be ideas that we get from people like you and others about what else is there to talk about. And then what we always say is that we would love to have you share with us something that you know and can enlighten us on anything to do with Linux. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour. As you can see today, we split it up between 3 people and Orv doing 2 different parts, and I didn't have to do anything this week. So it's not like we want you to do a full 2-hour. We want you to do a section. You give us some stuff that you're going to do, and we'll put together a workshop of information. Because I'm getting to the point where I don't know what else is there. We've taught you everything you need to know, so why aren't you using Linux?
Yeah. And I'm looking for still workshops on Writer, Google Docs, and Word. Just short demos on all of them so people can contrast and compare and say, oh, maybe I will go to Writer, or gosh, that Google Docs suits my needs. And the same thing with the 3 spreadsheet programs and the 3 presentation programs. I can use Calc, but I cannot use Impress. It makes absolutely no sense to me at all. And John thinks I'm crazy about that, and Docs, it isn't sophisticated enough for me, so to speak, for presentations. But I would love that. I would love a hands-on presentation of Brave and DuckDuckGo, because we talk about them being secure and everything. But we'd like to share that with everybody else. And I just found somebody who gave a presentation on kind of something like that to his group last November. And so maybe I can broker some of those things. But let us know if you'd like to, demo Writer, or you think Word's the be all to end all, or Google Docs is the way you go now.
Yeah, and I think we've mentioned this before. It's all depends on what you want to do. And when Andy was talking, I think it was Andy talking about asking something what person you do. I'm not opposed to recommending to somebody, just get a Chromebook. You don't do enough extra stuff that the Chromebook is going to be simple enough, easy for you to do. Now, when you wanted to be able to do more, then we talk about Linux. But it's what you do. Even if you have to go to a tablet because you just don't really do anything, it's up to the individual. What is it you want to do?
But don't forget, there's still a learning curve with Chromebooks, because it's totally different. Even though it's Google, things we might expect that we can do, you can't do.
Yeah, and that's completely in the cloud, right? I think somebody mentioned I don't put anything in the cloud, so.
That was Jerry Crow from the Phoenix group. And yeah, and so if you're like, we have somebody in our group who wouldn't be got dead having anything in the cloud.
Yep.
And that's just his preference.
Well, I put things in the cloud. I just don't put any of my personal data.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, any more questions about anything? Any suggestions for workshops? Linux or the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays on other things? Unmentionable things. Okay, John, take us away.
Finish it out. All right, it's been another great workshop. I appreciate all of you joining us. the team, and Orv had to leave early, is always hoping that the efforts that we've done have helped some of you realize that there is alternatives and there is life after Windows. You could go ahead and just shut the windows like we do for wintertime and move over to the Penguin. Don't fear it.
Oh, God.
Penguin's good. So we'll see you next week. Just switching that, we're doing our second workshop on security. This is October is security month, and of course the Linux factor is Linux is the most secure, so that's how we do it on this month too. But we'll be back with 2 more presentations. Judy?
I have a security question. I forgot to read it. Do you need an antivirus program with Linux? That brings in our Cybersecurity Awareness Month here.
Right, and of course the answer is no, but I have an antivirus program because if I'm going to transfer something from a Windows person to somebody else files, then I want to make sure that their files aren't corrupted anyway. I won't say that we'll never need antivirus in Linux, but just the nature of how Linux works and the security, and it doesn't do things on its own, is the protection there.
And what program do you use?
Oh, if I would do Clam XTK.
Okay, Dave, do you use a security program for Linux?
No,
Okay,
Yeah, and I don't do it for Linux. I do it for files.
you did the other way.
Yeah.
Okay,
right. John's just trying to protect the people he's copying files for, really.
got it.
Or passing on files.
Yes.
Right.
All right. So
Checking files that they're sending you.
Correct.
well, but the files that they're sending me will have to be files that can not affect Linux. You know, most of the viruses stuff are active towards the Windows environment, and so they wouldn't run in Linux.
So it's a case of the hackers don't care about Linux people.
Not yet, but they're starting to, because of the fact that the world behind everything is run by Linux.
Yeah.
That you don't see. So they're after that, but it's always the human error usually. Andy.
Final comment, the Linux versus Windows, which one to use. Remind people, I try to remind people about Patch Tuesday. Right now, the Linux box that I'm on, which I believe is about a 15-year-old machine, is up for something like 75 days on the uptime. I have never, as far as I know, I've never had a Windows machine go more than a month without having to be rebooted because of Patch Tuesday. So between that and having multiple, the ease of having other users, whether it's kids, grandkids, whatever, where you don't even have to shut down and reboot, you just, log in as a second user because it was built as a multi-user system. Just go down and you sign on your second user that's set up. Somebody comes by and, oh, I just want to look something up. We were in the middle of doing your taxes. You don't have to shut down and let them get on the machine. Just let them go on with their own logon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Mr. Ungerman.
Just another quick comment, and it feeds into your security discussions in the future. Our window on the world is our browsers and our email programs. So whether or not you've got an antivirus installed in Linux, it's how you've set your browser up, how it's going to filter out all the vulnerabilities. And of course, it's that index finger that is clicking on those links that you get in your email. So much of that security is right up here. That's connected to what's your index finger is clicking on.
The old cartoon, the problem is between the chair and the computer screen. And that's us. We're sitting here making the choices of what to click on.
Yeah, there's a word for that. I've forgotten there's a term.
ID10T. ID10T.
And there's another one with the letters problem exists between table and chair, Pedecker, something like that too.
Yeah.
Okay, take us away, kiddo.
All right, thanks so much. We'll see you back in 1 month for Linux. We'll see you next week for another Wednesday workshop. And don't forget, on the in November, we have our next Saturday Safari along with APCUG's annual business meeting. And we want everybody to be joining us for that. Save chat, and we'll see everybody in the future.